Hello everyone. Today's presentation is about palatally impacted canines, perspective and biomechanics. I'll be going into details about how such problems needs to be treated in orthodontics. If we go into the perception of palatally impacted canines, any palatally impacted tooth is always tough to treat. So we'll look into the case directly. So this is a patient of 13 years of age. She comes with a missing upper left canine. Now she complains of tooth getting stuck within the jaw and with associated irregularity of the front teeth. She did not have any form of medical history. Now since it's a regular orthodontic case, we went ahead with the extraoral photograph. As you can see, that the frontal photograph shows that her chin is slightly deviated to the left, but overall competent lips. If you look into the smiling photograph, you will be able to see that she presents with crowding of anterior teeth. That is her chief complaint. The biggest problem that she came with is that one of her teeth is stuck within the jaw and the upper left milk teeth was moving. So if we come into the 45-degree view, we would also analyze that there is significant crowding of teeth. But the profile view shows that she has an orthognathic facial profile. If you go into the intraoral perspectives, we find that there is crowding of the anterior teeth. Yes, there is overlap. She presents with a deciduous teeth and an impacted upper left permanent canine. The deciduous teeth, as you can see, is mobile. She also presents with a mild class 3 tendency in which the molar relationship and canine relationship is class 3 on the right hand side. If you go into the occlusal view, she presents with a palatal bulge where there is an impacted canine. Now, the palatal bulge is one of the commonest indications and clinical indications where we can understand where the canine is actually placed. A buccal bulge can also be felt, but in this case, there was a palatal bulge. So you see there is a palatal bulge in the upper left side. She also presents with a lower anterior crowding. The radiographs show that the upper left canine is impacted and looks to be favorably impacted. So that's where the canine is. And we have to take into perceptions of this article from Erickson and Kroll of radiographic assessment of maxillary canine. There are ways and means to radiographically assess it. We'll go into details of it one by one. So if we take the occlusal view of this patient, and we are following the vertical tube shift technique, we have a horizontal one and a vertical one. Here we are following the vertical tube shift technique. So that is exactly where the canine is placed in the upper left quadrant. Now we'll follow the Slob rule. So therefore, which suggests that palatally placed canine tends to come down in an OPG. And therefore, since the position in the OPG was below that of the occlusal radiograph, we come to a conclusion that this canine was palatally placed. However, you can go through this article by Jacobs, radiographic localization of unerupted teeth, further findings about the vertical tube shift technique to actually know how exactly vertical tube shift is done. If you go into the prognostic perspective, you will be able to understand that this canine was placed at 65 degrees to the occlusal plane and 11 mm from the occlusal plane, which makes it of moderate severity, according to this article by Erickson and Kroll, where radiographic examination of ectopically erupting maxillary canine. Therefore, we need to understand that this case was of moderate severity, but since the patient was young and the canine was more or less favorably placed, we would attempt to bring down the canine into place. So you can have an additional CVCT, which give you a conclusive statement as to where the canine is exactly placed. It is always an additional armamentarium in the hands of the orthodontist and the maxillofacial surgeon. So if you have the CVCT in hand, then localization becomes easier and the surgical intervention becomes much more conservative. So you can see in this CBCT that the canine was palatally placed. So if we go into the cephalometry, which is a lateral cephalogram, we need to assess whether we need to do an extraction philosophy or a non-extraction philosophy. So that's the basic armamentarium which you should have. So the lateral cephalogram, when we did a tracing in the pneumocest and did a composite analysis of it, we are able to conclude a few statements. Now that's the tracing. So we show the upper incisors are a bit proclined and the lower incisors are a bit upright. So when we superimposed over the photograph, it clearly showed that there is some amount of discrepancy associated with the dentition. The skeletal relationship was, however, class 1. So when we analyzed the lateral cephalogram and the photograph and did the composite tracing, we found out that there was an A and B, as you could see, that the A and B is -4 degrees, which clearly shows that there is a class 3 skeletal base. The upper incisors were proclined. The IMPA shows that the lower incisors were a bit retroclined. The FMA also shows that it's below 25 degrees, which means that it is a horizontal growth pattern. However, the nasolabial angle and the lower lip to E line shows that it's a pretty orthognathic facial profile. So the net conclusion of the lateral ceph is class 3 skeletal base, horizontal growth pattern, proclined upper incisors, retroclined lower incisors, and a balanced facial profile. So coming to the conclusion about this, the whole diagnostic aspect, you need to digitize your models. And once we analyze the models, we are able to find out, along with the cephalogram, that it is going to be a non-extraction philosophy, where we are going to basically level and align the lower and the upper arch. However, to avoid unnecessary proclination of the incisors and to maintain the balanced facial profile, we might need to do a bit of proximal stripping. So the treatment objective and the planning would be based on this diagram. So how are we trying to bring the canine out? So the first perspective would be to localize the canine, do a closed method, so that the integrity of the periodontal structures are well maintained. So you place an attachment over the top of the canine after doing that minor surgical procedure. Then we would follow these considerations by Fournier, who clearly stated that how the impacted canines and what are the considerations that needs to be taken care of, bony as well as soft tissue considerations. And once we are accustomed with it, we go ahead with the procedures. So what we find is that the base arch wire has to be at least a 018 stainless steel wire, the Australian, preferably a premium wire, so that you have adequate rigidity. The auxiliary arch wire should be about 0.014 SS to give light continuous forces. We're going to follow the auxiliary mechanics, and this is how we are planning to put an inverted coil spring, a modification of the ballista spring. And once we have inverted it and placed it into the auxiliary tube of the molar, that is the initial placement. But in order to activate it, we need to turn it upside down. So we will turn it upside down and go up. So the net effective motion now for the upper impacted canine, when we tie it with the attachment, would be an exclusive force and an outward force also. So it will basically try to bring the palatal canine, impacted canine out into line. So that's exactly how we are planning to bring down the canine. That is the one perspective. But then there is another perspective which we need to look into, is that since the teeth is palatally placed, how about the torque at the end of the treatment and how we are planning to correct it? There are various methods to correct torque. So when the canine has come out into place, So there are various methods to correct the torque. One could be altering brackets, or you might have a variable torque bracket. It could also be that you could use auxiliary springs, something like a Francisca Tan torquing auxiliary. Here we are planning to do it with modified, the versatile brackets. So, we are planning to put a -7-degree bracket in the canine once it comes into place. That is exactly the torque of the premolar bracket, which you could exchange in the upper arch. So once that -7-degree bracket is placed, there will be a significant amount of palatal uh, root torquing, okay, which would more now try to come buccally. So therefore, what we do is that we need to gain negative torque in a palatally impacted canine with upper premolar bracket. So that's exactly what we are going to do. And when there is a bracket wired interaction, that is a rectangular wired in a rectangular slot. Therefore, what happens is that you will get a lot of buccal root torquing, which would make the canine absolutely perfect alignment with the arch. So that's our exact planning, how we need to progress. So what is our appliance prescription? Our appliance prescription in the maxillary arch is this is the Genius system that we are using. However, we need to take into consideration the torque perspective, because since we are planning to do a non-extraction treatment plan, the normal MBT bracket would come with a torque of plus 22 degrees, but then it would unnecessarily flare the incisors. So in the upper arch, a standard torque bracket of plus 14 degree and plus 6 degree for the lateral incisor is taken into consideration. So Genius system comes with these perspectives. So the lower is basically the upper on the left side is also the same. So that's the prescription in the upper arch. Once we so we need to take basically the aspect of torque advantage. So when we have less torque in case of non-extraction treatment, we would prevent a lot of flaring. So we go into the lower arch. When we go into the lower arch, we'll be able to see that these are standard brackets, almost same prescription as that of the MBT system. So the lower consideration is not taken into place. So the arch wire sequencing that we need to know is basically we start off in the upper arch with the 014 NiTi for 45 days, and then we plan a significant amount of stainless steel wires because we need a rigid arch wire to bring the canine down into place. That took quite a lot of time in the upper arch. In the upper arch also, then we go ahead with a 1925 NiTi. Once we have a 1925 NiTi into place, that's about 30 days at the last. Then we go to 1925 stainless steel and 014 NiTi to just settle the occlusion. We need to understand that this is the working arch wire because that's exactly the wire in which we are planning to bring down the canine. We can also bring down in a rigid stainless steel wire, rectangular one, 1725. But here we had used premium 0.018 SS wire. In the lower arch, it's pretty easy, in which we use a 016 NiTi and just alignment of the teeth with a bit of proximal stripping. And 018 SS, 1925 NiTi, and 1925 SS. So basically, we need to understand that that's the sequence of the wire that we follow regularly in cases of non-extraction. And here the working arch wire in the upper arch is the 018 SS wire. So we'll now go into the treatment progress. That's a self-ligation system in place. So what do we exactly do? So this is a stage in which we are bringing down the canine. That's the auxiliary arch wire in place, along with a coil spring, which is used to create adequate space for the canine to come out into light. So that's basically a self-ligation system. And you can see that the gates of the self-ligation system are open here just to accommodate the auxiliary arch wire. So that's exactly how it looks. So you can give a ligature tie since you are not able to close up in case of a self-ligation system. So the next thing that we need to look into is details of this perspective, because that's the most important part of this presentation. So the base arch wire is a 018SS Australian AJ Wilcock wire. So that's your base arch wire. The auxiliary arch wire is 014SS, which has an inverted loop auxiliary to bring the canine outside into line. So we have exactly given a description of the details of how the biomechanics work in our previous slide. So that's the auxiliary arch wire. So you can go into this specific article by Jacobi, the ballister spring system. It's a very popular system to be used for palatally impacted canines. So that's the treatment progress in which we have uncovered the canine and the canine has started to bring out into line. There is a coil spring which is still placed so that you maintain the space whichever you have achieved initially. That's a passive coil spring as of now. So first of all, we use the closed the method for bringing down the canine. For exposing it, attaching, you can use a multi-purpose attachment or a big bracket, whichever attachment you feel comfortable. Then what we do is that allow the teeth to erupt a bit on its own before starting to give active forces. The active forces has to be very, very light, something within 100 grams of force. We should also take into consideration the transverse considerations, which is the anchorage. We can get bowing of the arches if auxiliaries are used and excessive forces are used without maintaining the transverse dimension. Here, transpalatal arch was used to maintain the same. So if you want to go into the perspectives of palatally impacted canine, there is one more article on closed eruption versus open eruption by Burden. And it's an excellent article to describe as to in which cases you would ideally like to do open and close. However, it is always preferable to do close so that the integrity of the biologic width is actually maintained and the crown height, you don't get an unnecessary increase in crown length. So the treatment progressed with bringing down the canine into place and alignment of both the upper and the lower. The sequence of the wires have already been mentioned. So what we do now is that we need to get an ideal torque to the canine. So we actually place the upper premolar bracket. An upper premolar bracket can be placed which has a minus 7-degree torque to the canine instead of a canine bracket. However, if you have a variable torque option, which was not there in this system, you could actually make a use bracket of the canine also if you are able, if minus 7 degrees available. So that's minus 7-degree torque from the premolar bracket which we took, and it's replaced in the canine region. So that's exactly how we do it. Now the palatally impacted canine, this case finished off pretty decently. Well, you can see the midlines are perfectly on, the alignment is almost close to perfect. There is alignment and decrowding, which was one of the objectives has been taken care of. Then if you have a class 1 molar and a canine, which you can see, it's a well-seated class 1 molar. A minor settling is required in the premolar, which would settle over time. And this is exactly what we are looking at. If you look into the crown length of the canine, it's as good as it gets. They are well upright. And if you can see the root prominence of the canine, you would note that good amount of buccal root torquing has been done. And we're pretty successful with the torque. So de-impaction with adequate torque is achieved for that teeth. The most important perspective which you need to look into is the prominence of the root of the canine. If you're able to achieve prominence of root of the canine at the end of the treatment in a case of palatally impacted canine, then your torque is perfect. So that's the canine into place as of now with good occlusion. So what's the net result? So the post-treatment, we got this, the midlines are perfectly on. That's a beautiful smile that we got at the end of the day. So the smile aesthetics is you get a consonant smile arc with well-aligned upper and the lower arch. So that's a good enough smile at the end of the treatment. So that's a 45-degree view, which also gives you an acknowledgement for the fact that the smile is sitting perfect. So the profile view shows that an orthognathic facial profile is there. And even though it was a non-extraction decrowding case, we did not bring about a lot of flaring and prominence to the upper and the lower lip. So that's still orthognathic at the end of the day. So the radiograph shows that we have been able to bring down the canine into place with a good amount of tip in the canine, ideally. So the canine is good into place, while the other portion of the radiograph shows that good amount of root divergence is there, and there is no issue with root resorption or any associated iatrogenic problem. So when we analyze the cephalometric parameters, that is post-treatment, and we did an EMOCEPH tracing of a composite analysis. And the analysis of the tracing was done. We can see that the upper and the lower incisors are now well within the arch, and the inclination is now perfect. When we superimpose it over the photograph, we are able to get the perspective that the soft tissue and the hard tissue balance is very good. So that's the superimposition. So when we analyzed it with respect to numbers in a cephalometric superimposition, we found out that the A and B angle is -3. So there is a bit of extrusive component which was there during the course of the treatment, which actually had a bit of an effect on correcting the class 3 a bit. The upper incisors are well within the arch, and there is a gross improvement of 3 to 4 degrees. So we did not flare the incisors. We in fact retracted them with a bit of proximal stripping and the use of low torque brackets. The IMPA is well within the range. The FMA shows that it's now an average growth pattern. So the growth of the patient was also prominent and favorable towards orthodontics. The nasolabial angle is still obtuse, and the lower lip to E line is close to normal. So the overall soft tissue contours and hard tissue contours at the end of the treatment looks perfectly fine. So that's the post-treatment, cast study models. And what did we analyze out of the study models is that the PAR index score is 0. So which means that it's a near perfect treatment with no problems in occlusion, no problems in overjet, overbite, midlines. That's what you expect at the end of the treatment. So how did we come about with the treatment? So it's an analysis pre and post treatment. So that's how we started with an impacted, palatally impacted canine with a deciduous counterpart which was mobile. So we removed it. We used auxiliary mechanics with braces on, and we used variable torque brackets to upright the roots of the canine and bring it into place. And final result that we got is a teeth well aligned within the arch with good occlusion at the end of the day, which is the perspective of any orthodontic treatment. So what is the pre and post treatment comparison of the extraoral shows that yes, it's a very balanced face, and the competency of the lip is not compromised at the end of the treatment, even though it was non-extraction. There's no crowding at the end of the day. The smile arc is perfect and well aligned upper and lower arch with midlines perfectly on. When we see this analysis, we found out that that the 45-degree view, the smile is very, very aesthetic at the end of the treatment. So the profile analysis at the end of the day shows that the lip competency is still established. The profile is still orthognathic, and no unnecessary proclination of the teeth actually happens during the course of the treatment. In fact, the teeth were mildly retracted. So if you want to go into details of palatally impacted canine, you can go through this article in which we talk about biomechanics and perspectives of it. And we talk, you can cite the article in the Journal of Indian Orthodontic Society, where we have given you details about one of our cases, not the same case, one of our cases in which we have treated palatally impacted canine. Thank you for being with us. It is the COVID time, and we need to stay home and stay safe. And this presentation goes out as a dedication and support and help to all the frontline workers working with us. Thank you so much.